to the Experience Darden podcast. I'm your host, Brett Twitty, and you are listening to a new episode. On this episode of the podcast, I'm excited to share my recent conversation with Curie Chang. Curie is a recent graduate in our full-time MBA class of 2024, and she also has her own venture, a venture called Petrichor. Petrichor is an apparel manufacturing and disposable startup specializing in zero waste and closed-loop processes. And Curie and I recently connected to talk more about her background, her decision to pursue an MBA, what led her to Darden, how she explored her entrepreneurial idea during her time at Darden, and so much more. I think you're really going to enjoy this episode. And as always, if this conversation is helpful for you, please like this episode and subscribe to the Experience Darden podcast so you never miss an update. And remember, you can always check the episode description for links to Darden blogs, social channels, and more resources. And now, without further ado, here's my conversation with Curie Chang. Curie, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks, Brett. How are you?
I'm doing well. How are you doing?
I'm great. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. How is everything? How is life?
Life is good. I just finished moving back up to Northern Virginia, and my husband's here, and we've been doing a little bit of distance. I'm really happy to be back home. I'm surrounded by moving boxes, though, so hopefully I'll get to clearing all of that up pretty soon.
All right. Well, I know that's a busy time, and appreciate your taking some time for the podcast. So you just graduated from Darden. How does that feel?
It feels a little odd, to be honest. You just constantly surrounded by your classmates, going to classes, and you're trying to split your time between the classes and the business, and it's a juggling game. And then there's this whirlwind of graduation and saying goodbye to people you've known for the last 2 years that you realize that you've grown closer to than you maybe even thought was possible in that short amount of time. And the professors that really cared about you and about your success, and leaving all that behind has been it's been bittersweet.
I can understand a time of lots of different emotions, undoubtedly, graduation. So, and maybe even new beginnings, the next step on a path. So, let's start with your story. So, tell us more about who you are. Who are you, and what's your background?
Yeah, so my name is Curie Chang, and I studied industrial engineering for undergrad and then studied biomedical engineering for grad school after that, and ended up working in the data field for about the last 10 years. My most recent job was at the Federal Reserve Board. I was a data scientist there, and we studied how different communities experience economic conditions. And we focused very heavily on low and moderate income communities, rural communities, and minority communities.
So, is an MBA something you've always thought about?
So I think I've had a decent number of friends who pursued their MBAs in their mid to late 20s. And at the time, I didn't think it was the right fit for me. I had already pursued a graduate degree, and I wasn't sure if pursuing an MBA really made sense for me. But after I had this idea for my current business, which is Petrichor, I chatted with one of those friends and who had gotten an MBA, and he convinced me that this might be the right path for me. And since the industry for Petrichor is in apparel, which is so different from what I was doing, which was in data science at the Fed, I thought pursuing an MBA would really help me de-risk this pivot. And it did. It gave me a safe place to fall down, to pick myself back up, to succeed, and to learn new things in the process.
So, before we talk about why Darden, I do want to talk a little bit about the idea for your business, where the inspiration came from, and what your business is all about. So, let's talk about where did the idea come from?
Yeah. So before Darden, I lived in Colorado for about 2 years. My husband's he's an active duty military member. So we were moving around bases, and we were out in Colorado for that reason. And during that time, we encountered this large wildfire called Cameron Peak wildfires. It came to within about 10 miles of my house. We weren't in any real danger because it had to come over the foothills. But I think that was the point, and experiencing like the ash falling from the sky, the really apocalyptic looking sky, and everything that's involved with wildfires just convinced me to switch the priorities in my career. So that really changed my career trajectory right then. So I started taking classes in textile engineering of all things, because the textile waste was something that really concerned me, the amount of textiles that end up in the landfills, and And of course, fast fashion that exacerbates that problem. So as I took this class, I pitched the ideas that I had to the professors at NCSU, which was the textile engineering, the only place that really offers that as a major. And I think that those conversations really help solidify the idea of petrichor. Um, and petrichor has two branches. So first is this apparel idea, which I came to Darden with, and it's a brand that only creates clothes that are designed to be either recycled, upcycled, or responsibly decomposed. And we essentially try to go against the trend of overconsumption in the world by producing very limited number of designs per year. So our first two sets of tops that we were creating are actually 100% hemp. And we chose hemp because they take up less water as a plant, and then they also provide more fiber per plant. So it's a really naturally sustainable crop per se. And as a fabric, after it gets processed into fabric, it gets softer at wash. It's incredibly durable. And the recyclers that I've spoken to are actually really excited about prospect of recycling 100% hemp fabrics because it has those properties and can be melded back with virgin fibers into new fabrics a little bit more easily. So we're putting those pieces out actually pretty soon, in the next 3 months or so, which is what I'm looking forward to in the coming months. The buttons are biodegradable. They're actually made from Corozo buttons, and it's a seed. It's, I guess, buttons made out of seed, and we're really excited about that. They have been customized for the shirts that we're making. So that's the first part of the company. And then as I was building this sustainable apparel company, I realized how difficult circularity is to incorporate into your company. So circularity is this concept that what the energy that you put in continues to be used throughout the cycles, and your supply chain is essentially linked together so that nothing that you put in comes out as it comes out to be complete waste. Of course, there's always like inevitable amount of waste, but you try to um, put circularity into design so that when you get to the end of life stage, that you're able to either recycle pieces back into that chain, or to upcycle it, or to make that whole process easier. So and as we try to build this apparel company, realize why circularity in textiles is so difficult to achieve, because there are so many problems for brands, there are problems for consumers, there are also problems for recyclers, and it's difficult to link those chains together. So our second branch of the company actually focuses on certification and the sorting process of clothes. And this really came out of the fact that costs of sorting and recycling comes from the sorting part, because you literally have people standing at the line looking at bales of clothes that you might have donated, or bales of clothes that you might have thrown out, and you cull through them and you try to look for items that can be extracted for resale, or for destination into landfill, unfortunately. But those are real people looking at these clothes. And if you try to go into automation, then of course automation, the machinery gets bigger and bigger and bigger, and it gets more expensive, right? So that portion is what I think of as the Uber pool of textile recycling. We essentially pool similar clothes together and we match it with a recycler who's willing to accept them. And that's the second portion of the branch. And it's a more long-term plan. And we're trying to see which partners in the industry, in the commercial sector and the government sector are willing to partner with us to push that effort forward.
All right, lots of things to talk about there. Um, how did you learn about this textile waste issue?
Yeah, I think when that wildfire happened, I try to look at various issues that are causing climate change, and textile waste actually came up as one of the top issues. Of course, there are lots of other issues that folks are aware of, and I could have just as well ended up in wastewater treatment treatment work, because that's also a big area, or in various different issues. So, but this one is something that just caught my eye as a textile waste, and the growing coverage and the mountain of waste that exists around the world. And yeah.
It's interesting because we've had another Darden student on the podcast, Elizabeth Blankenship, who had a similar sort of repurposing of textile kind of idea.
Yeah, that's a good point. So I think it's funny because Darden wasn't something that I was 100% sure about. But then I had a call with Elizabeth Blankenship, who we just mentioned, and she launched her sustainable fashion brand while she was here. And talking with her and her enthusiasm and confidence about her experience is really what won me over to Darden and convinced me that I could be successful here as well. So she had a huge impact on my life in that way.
Yeah, I figured there had to be some connection between the two of you, just given the similar interest and
Yeah.
similar goals. Your brand is called Petrichor.
Yeah.
For folks who are not familiar with what Petrichor is, do you want to explain what it is and how that we'll see it's how that might relate to what you're trying to do?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So yeah, it's spelled Petricor, petrichor. Some people say petrichor, but it's petrichor. It is English. I've gotten a lot of questions about that, but it means the smell of the earth after the rain, that earthy smell that you get after the rain. And it's meant to symbolize the refreshing energy that the company brings to the world, and also the hope that we have and the impact of our company to make circularity easier and also bring about much wanted change in terms of recycling and bringing circularity into the mix.
So I'm curious about these two
Mhm.
parts of your business. What came first? How did you decide that you needed to expand it in this way, that you need to have these two halves of the business? Just curious about the evolution of things.
Yeah, absolutely. So the first part was the apparel portion. As a consumer, I think it's much easier to think from the consumer perspective, and buying clothes is a very natural thing for us, right? I think when I was actually little, clothes is like one of these three main things about that every human experiences. It touches your skin. And I think the three things were like housing, food, and clothes. You need those three things to survive. So clothes really was just a natural thing for me to kind of think about. And as a consumer, I always just really wondered why somebody hadn't thought about making clothes recyclable from the very beginning. And that's where the circularity comes in. Building circularity in at the design stage, it's so much more easier than trying to make something recyclable at the very end. And I think that's one of the big issues that the clothing industry is experiencing, because the industry has evolved and developed in a way where that isn't taken into account at the design stage. It's quite expensive. It's expensive in terms of time. It's expensive in terms of man hours and the effort and the thought process that really goes into it. And even building just two pieces of clothing with hemp it really took a lot of time. Like if you think about all the aspects of your clothes, and a lot of people don't think about it, right? It's something you wear. But if you think about the aspect of your clothes, you have buttons, you have trims that are like tags, you have threads in your seams, and you have the fabric. And sometimes you have other things that like embroidery, decorative things, right? And all those things they have to be taken apart, and they have to eventually decompose or be thrown out. So when it gets thrown out, what pieces can be salvaged and what pieces are easier to recycle, and what pieces have to be taken apart. Like the deconstruction process is actually a big part of it. So thinking about all those things, that's the first part of apparel business that I really thought about. And then no, just trying to put that into motion. And of course, I think business ideas are funny because you had this idea, you think it's a really cool idea, and then you really start getting deeper involved in it. And then of course, like it starts showing you your competitors and people that already existed and have already failed and or are successful, and you end up thinking, okay, what did I get myself into? And that's sort of I think that's a really natural progression of developing your business idea. And of course, like we're still trying to put out our two products from the apparel side, but I think this particular experience has shown me why it's difficult to implement circularity in a textiles environment. And that really led to this certification idea where we essentially assess a brand's item for its recyclability. So we assess each item from brand, backed by recyclers' commitment to accept those items, and then we issue the certification, and then we also help facilitate the delivery of those items to the recyclers. So it's kind of a natural progression for me, natural progression of this like business idea that we had. And of course, there's lots of ups and downs in between that. But yeah, that's how the two pieces like played out.
Maybe a bit of a obvious question here, but I'm curious about clothing recycling. Like, what does that mean? Does that mean like it could be worn by somebody else, that the fabric could be repurposed to create another piece of clothing? Like, I think about recycling in the context of like cans and bottles and glass and all this kind of stuff, but is this similar? Is it different?
I think in some ways it's similar, some ways it's different. I think the resale portion or upcycling is probably the best option for clothes because it actually preserves that energy that went into the clothes and allows you to either have somebody else wear it, patch it up or wear it, or turn it into a different product, and then also, and it lengthens its lifespan. So I think that's like the primary or the better, higher tier, quote unquote, recycling, if you will. And then the next portion, which is what my company focuses on, is actually taking the pieces apart into a fiber level and then trying to put together a new product based upon it. So with recycling, it's not a one-to-one ratio in terms of the yield, but recycling fabrics actually is quite complex. There's one first part of it is mechanical recycling, which is you literally like put your fabric into to a machine and it takes it apart into fibers. And the amount of reusable fibers really depends on the length of the fibers that come out of that process. It could be sometimes if it's too short, you can't do much about it. It has to be turned into insulation and other sort of like lint-like properties that you kind of clump together, which also has its uses. If it's too long, then you have other issues. So you have to have this like very specific staple fiber length that you can weave back into yarn. And oftentimes, because it's used fabric, it has to be merged with or spun with virgin fibers. And then it gets spun back into yarns and put back into fabrics. And that's how you get your recycled fabrics. There's also chemical recycling, which you literally put the fabric into either a chemical solution or some kind of process. Lots of companies like Cirque are really well known for that. That they're able to essentially disentangle the fibers in a way where they can be either separated out into separate components or and then put back into the fabric itself. So for instance, like cotton and polyester, you have a lot of cotton polyester brands that exist and companies can put them into solutions and actually be able to separate the cotton from the polyester, and the polyester ends up becoming this like blob of plastic that you can extrude fibers from, and because that's how polyester fiber is made. So those are the different types of recycling that we have for fabrics, and that exists in the world anyway. But for us right now, we're focusing really heavily on mechanical recycling because our first two products are 100% hemp, and they're really apt for that natural recycling, natural fiber recycling, which is
Did you learn about all this through your textile engineering courses, or is this just something you've learned over the course of your work?
This is something that I learned through my textile engineering courses, and a lot of peer review journal researching. So there's a lot of information available online if you're willing to read through past abstract, which is it's kind of fun. It's also really interesting, different types of things, and I think something that's really been helpful is talking to industry partners, and I think one of the biggest impact that NCSU had is, which is the place that I took textile engineering courses from, is that my advisors from there were able to connect me to various experts in this area. So one is somebody who's really a big expert in hemp fibers, and his name is Guy Carpenter, and he's the one that kind of taught me all about hemp fabrics and been able to really talk to me through the various aspects of the fabrics that I'm sourcing. And There's also Bob Carswell, who is in charge of a company called Material Returns, and Material Returns is a mechanical recycling company. So he's also been really helpful in helping me learn about different types of recycling and what his company does. And they're actually really excited about the hemp products that I'm releasing and the other branch as well that I'm developing.
Well, I want to talk about your time here at Darden and how you explored these ideas that you had. It sounds like you were already on your mind, connected with Elizabeth. That conversation really sold you on the idea that Darden could be a good place for you. But how did Darden help you develop your business?
Yeah, Darden, I think, was just a really good place for talking about the idea, getting more settled with the idea, because, I took these courses and I had the idea, but it really had to resonate with other people, I think, for any business idea to succeed. And a huge part of it was my classmates. I mean, they were so supportive of what I was doing, and they were there if when I needed help with figuring something out, when I needed models, when I fit models, they were there to try clothes on, fill the fabric out, and be a source of consumer opinion, who's just available to me on a day-to-day basis. And they've been really, really helpful for that. And they're so encouraging. I think the professors here were also amazing whenever I needed to talk about, like, if I needed to talk about my pitch deck, or if I needed to run them through ideas and something made sense. And especially when I was developing my second set of ideas or second branch of the company, I think it was quite helpful to get their perspective on, its scalability and its potential in the market, which was amazing. And of course, there's the iLab, which is the experience that I had over the summer through the Batten Institute. And they've been able to connect me with a lot of different people, including mentors who've been able to advise me as switched, or pivoted into different ideas. Also, just give feedback when I needed it, and to be, in some ways, like my accountability partner, and also connect me to other founders who were trying to pursue their own ideas. And I think that's been quite amazing to have. And of course, like, the funding and other financial help that I've been able to get through the innovation grant, and also being able to pitch in competitions like eCup, like, that's huge. So being able to do that has been great. And of course, and last but not least, we have this club called KPI. KPI is a group it's an unofficial group for women founders. And we gather together every 2 weeks, and we're able to update each other on what we've been doing, and what we are planning to do, and any asks that we have for the group. And the group is just really tightly knit, and we are expected to, honor that level of commitment. And because of that, we were able to form this, like, relationship that I think will last beyond Darden. And I'm just really grateful for that as well.
I'll touch on a lot of things there. I laugh, eCup. Not surprised to hear that those were part of your experience here. I'm curious about the development of, designing a piece of clothing. Do you do that yourself? Do you have a designer that you work with? How does this all come together?
Yeah, initially I had someone from NCSU that helped me out in terms of the initial designs, and it was, I think it was like a T-shirt at that stage, and we had kind of came up with cool ideas for a T-shirt. There, just different seams and things like that, which which was very fun. But I think once we got closer and closer to the actual production, most of the designs really landed on my shoulders, and it came from wanting to and focusing on designs that are very classic, that are what I consider basics. So because our company is focused on reducing textile waste, I thought the best way to look at apparel is seeing what's used most often and what's replaced most often, which happen to be basics and classic styles, because that's what most people have in their closets. Um, it also might be my Coast influence now that I've been living here for a long time in DC. But I stuck with the button downs, which seems like a lot of our male counterparts have, and also an open collar top, which I'm actually wearing today, and for the female fit. So we have these two designs that I've seen a lot and a lot of people wear and replace often, and because it's worn frequently. And those aspects have been a little bit easier, but then when it gets down to sort of the brass taxes of like figuring out the fit, the darts, and the seam allowance, and all those things, I do have a partner who's in Los Angeles who's knitting or who's cutting and sewing our fabrics that can advise me on what best works in order to fit it to the right level, because fit's very, very important. And that's how we've been designing the pieces.
So are these made by hand?
No, no, they're that are cut and sewn in a facility in Los Angeles, but not by hand. They have machines, I believe.
Well, what is it like to develop, you take an idea, let's say design a shirt and then have it come to fruition and actually be able to wear it? What does that feel like?
It feels really rewarding, surprisingly and surprising. So I think this might be helpful for listeners as well. Like when you try to develop your own idea and try to pursue something, there's always like unexpected hurdles. And one of the hurdles I had was, unfortunately, some delays from my cutting and sewing company that got to a point where, oh man, and also the rise of the second branch of the company colliding together to a point where I thought, oh, maybe I should just focus on the second idea. And then I finally received a sample from the company that we had, and of course I've been talking about like how the hemp fabric is thermoregulating and it's great in this weather and it's better than linen and all those properties. And I don't think I quite internalize how amazing that feels once I put the sample on my skin. And we were in Florida for a wedding, and I thought, okay, well, let's test this product out. And I was really surprised to find that it actually kept my temperature level and provided protection in the hot sun. And I think that was when I realized, okay, well, I guess we're going to keep going with this apparel product and actually put it out into the world, because it is that good of a product. So I think that journey was definitely up and down, which is again expected for entrepreneurship. But I think it taught me a lot about how important quality of the product that you're making is, and and making sure that our decisions are based on that and nothing else.
Well, what's next for Petrichor? What are you looking forward to in the coming months?
Right. So our pre-orders are live and our products are coming out in the next 3 months or so. And so that portion is going in. Of course, like that means I have to order care tags. I have to make these little things to make that all happen with the supply chain and making sure all the different pieces look right and packaging things are here. And of course, that's like additional level work because we're a sustainable company. We want to make sure every aspect of our actual product and the packaging process is environmentally friendly. So that's something that I'll be working on very focused for the next three months. I'm also also trying to make sure that the second branch of the company is receiving the right kind of attention. So I've been attending various conferences, and that particular concept of the certification of recyclability of a product and the sorting and the facilitation of the items to a recycler, that is quite applicable to both commercial companies and or private companies, and also public organizations, including the government and the military. So I've been trying to attend conferences like the FedTex, which is like Federal Textiles Conference, where the military, there's a lot of military connections in terms of like looking at who to source fabrics and trims and different things from. And then I'm also going to another conference up in Boston to in a similar branch, and talking to various industry players to see where we can best position ourselves. And really, I think it comes down to solving the right kind of problem and solving the right putting ourselves in a position where we can best address those problems in a way where it makes a lasting impact. And that's what we're going to be doing in the next 3 to 6 months. And we're going to keep going.
Well, I love that. All right. So a piece of advice maybe for our prospective student listeners, maybe even folks who have their own ideas or whatever direction you like to take this, Curie. We always ask our guests for a word of advice for our listeners.
Yeah, I think with for listeners, so I think they tend to be all prospective students. If you have a business idea, Darden's a great place to start it. I think it's a great place to start your dreams, whatever they may be. I think the community has been incredibly supportive, and being part of this community gives you a lot of opportunities to connect with people, and to really get the right advice at the right time. It's amazing how what the people that you meet and the blessings that come from the people that you meet. And also, I think assuming positive intent is something that we talk about a lot in the community, and I think that's a huge thing. Where whether you're with your classmates or going to meet different people from the industry or trying to pitch your idea and whatnot, when you assume that people are rooting for you and rooting for your success, I think that entire process gets much easier, and it ends up being a better experience, overall better experience for you and for people that interact with you. So
Well, Curie, one more question for you. For folks who are interested in your venture, they want to learn more about Petrichor, where can they go?
yeah, so first is our website. It's www.petrichor.earth. So that's .earth, not .com. That's a real website. And our Instagram is petrichor.aftertherain. So so it's petrichor.aftertherain, like the phrase after the rain. Yeah.
Well, Curie, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. It's wonderful learning more about Petrichor and exciting to hear all the developments going on. Congratulations on having a shirt out into the world. Some of these basics uh, out there for people to purchase. That's undoubtedly a very exciting time for you.
Thank you so much, Brett. Thanks for having me.
And that was my conversation with Curie Chang, a recent graduate in our full-time MBA class of 2024. As always, if you have any comments, suggestions, requests, anything you'd like for us to cover here on the podcast, we're all ears. We can be reached at Darden, that's DARDEN, @virginia.edu. Till next time, stay safe, be well, and thanks for listening.